The very end now. Srila Prabhupada Vilamita. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Service and separation is the highest realization and ecstasy. This was the teaching of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In regard to Lord Krishna and his foremost devotees, the gopis of Vrindavan. When Krishna left his beloved gopis and went to Mathura, never to return to them in Vrindavan, the gopis and all the other residents of Vrindavan wept piteously and could not live without him. And to maintain their lives, they began to constantly remember and discuss his name, fame, form, and entourage. By constantly remembering him in love and by anticipating his return to Vrindavan, they achieved an ecstasy of union and separation, which Gaudiya Vaishnava scholars declare to be superior, even to the ecstasy the gopis felt in meeting in Krishna's presence. Because Krishna is absolute, even remembering him or chanting his name puts the devotee into direct contact with him. But because there is simultaneously a feeling of separation from him, there is an added dimension of inconceivable, simultaneous union and separation. This is the epitome of Krishna conscious realization. Srila Prabhupada ki Vipralamba, separation. And Sambhogya is meeting. So Vipralamba is more intense than meeting. So read in Srimad Bhagavatam, this is the 7th canto, chapter entitled Hiranyakashipu, King of the Demons. And we're on text 45. Na Shrota Anuvaktayam Na Shrota Anuvaktayam Mukyo Pi Atra Mahan Asu Mukyo Pi Atra Mahan Asu Yas Tui Ihendriyavan Atma Yas Tui Ihendriyavan Atma Sa Chanya Prana Dehayo Sa Chanya Prana Dehayo Na Shrotana Nubhaktayam Mukyo Pyatra Mahanasu Yastviyandriyavan Atma Sanchanya Pranadehayo Na Shrotana Nubhaktaya Mukyo Pyatra Mahanasu Yastvayandriyavan Atma Sachanya Pranadehayo. Nana Shrotana Dehayo Shrotana Bhaktaya Mukyopi Yatra Mahanasu Yasta Indrena Atma Satyanya Pandehayo Mahasadhu Yastvayendranatma Sachanya Pranadehayo No Shrutananavaktaya Yastvayendranatma Na, not. Shrota, the listener. Na, not. Anuvakta, the speaker. I am this. Mukhya, chief. Api, although. Atra, in this body. Mahan, the great. Asu, lifer. Yaha, he who. Tu, but. Iha, in this body. Indriyavan, possessing all the sense organs. Atma, the soul. Saha, he. Cha, and. Anya, different. Pranadehayo, from the life air and the material body. Translation: in the body, the most important substance is the life air, but that also is neither the listener nor the speaker. Beyond even the life air, the soul also can do nothing, for the supersoul is actually the director in cooperation with the individual soul. The supersoul conducting the activities of the body is different from the body and the living force. Responsibly, please. In the body, the most important substance is the life air, but that also is neither the listener nor the speaker. Beyond even the life air, the soul also can do nothing, but the supersoul is actually the director in cooperation with the individual soul. The supersoul conducting the activities of the body is different from the body and the living force. The Supreme Personality of God, it distinctly says in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Savasya chaham hridi sanavishta mata smrite gyanam apohanam cha. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Although the Atma, or soul, is present in every material body, dehanosmin yata dehe, he is not actually the chief person acting through the senses, mind, and so on. The soul can merely act in cooperation with the supersoul because it is the supersoul who gives him directions to act or not to act. Mataha smriti jnanam apohanam cha. One cannot act without his sanction, for the supersoul is upadrasta and anumanta, the witness and sanctioner. One who studies carefully under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master can understand the real knowledge that the Supreme Personality of God is actually the conductor of all the activities of the individual soul and the control of their results as well. Although the individual soul possesses the indriyas or senses, he is not actually the proprietor, for the proprietor is the supersoul. Consequently, the supersoul is called Hrishikesh, and the individual soul is advised by the direction of the supersoul to surrender to him and thus be happy. Savadaman parityajya mam ekam sharanam raja. Thus he can become immortal and be transferred to the spiritual kingdom, where he will achieve the highest sources of an eternal blissful life of knowledge. In conclusion, the individual soul is different from the body's senses, living force, and the airs within the body, and above him is the supersoul, who gives the individual soul all facilities. The individual soul who renders everything, the super soul, lives very happily within the body. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swavadantika. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasadi Gauravata Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Vanchikapatrubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva paritanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So, interesting point here. This is Hiranyakashipu still speaking to the to pacify. Well, actually, is this the story? Yamaraj, yeah. So Hiranyakashipu telling the story, yeah, of what Yamaraj. And I guess if anyone would know, Yamaraj would know. It's interesting, isn't it, that Hiranyakashipu, king of the demons, he knew about Yamaraj. Because normally you tell people about Yamaraj and the Yamadutas to scare them into not being demoniac any longer. That's really what, thank you. That's what some religions have done, isn't it? They've used the fear of going to hell as an incentive. Just be good because, and in hell they didn't really know what hell was like, right? Just somebody with horns and a pitchfork and a lot of flames. That was it. It's a lot more explicit. Hiranyakashipu knows about the hellish planets. He knows about Yamaraj. He knows about the Yamadutas, and he's still a demon. He's still thinking he can kill. If Vishnu turns up, he'll kill him. So that's interesting, isn't it? That you have to be some demon to be able to do that. To think you can take on God and kill him. So that's like the ultimate demon. As he understood how the universe was functioning, Hiranyakashipu, because he had the demigods behaving in such a way that it was always the season of spring, and the trees were always producing fruits, and there were no ailments, no diseases. So he knew really, really well how everything was set up because he was controlling it himself. He was in charge of all the demigods. So he was thinking, I'm running this universe better than God was, and when he turns up, I'll bump him off, and I'll just carry on like this, and I'll run everything forever. So that's a real demon. See, people generally now we have demons. They're like really, really low class. They're like a person going up to a grandfather clock and just sticking the screwdriver right in its face, and then the clock doesn't function well anymore. And so then they get cancer, or they get mental disorders. They'll take some drug, or they'll do something, and it'll actually be detrimental to them. But imagine if you knew the clock so well that you could take that clock apart and you could make it run at a different speed, and you could slow down time. That's what Hiranyakashipu was. That's the ultimate demon. You have to be so powerful to be able to do that. To think that you can work the clock better than the clockmaker who put the clock there in the first place. And that's really what they're doing, isn't it? They'll take a species. Srila Prabhupada says, well, what is their credit if they create life? The life's already been created. So they make a test tube baby. They want to try and show that they can do it better than God. Or we'll take this guy and we'll make him into a superhuman, when there's a war, we'll have him so he's part robot, and he'll be able to work all the machinery inside his body, but he'll be like a killing machine. It'll be better than what God created. We'll make the body younger, stronger, and more intelligent than how God made it. So this is what they're doing. They're it's like having pound shop Hiranyakashipus. Because normally when you get it from the pound shop, and it says, it's like I had one. It was a camera stand, and it said it was a camera stand, and it looked like a camera stand. I was thinking it's only £1, And then I put it down, and I put the camera on, and it went, and that was the very first time. And then nobody's going to take it back, right, for £1. So that's how they make their money. So we have a lot of pound shop Hiranyakashipus. They're all, but when it comes to it, they can't actually pull it off. Hiranyakashipu had pulled it off. He got the whole universe running, under him, which means he must have been conscious of what was going on, which is like multifunctioning, just beyond our ability to understand it. And that's how powerful the jiva, because Brahma is one of the jivas that can be all cognizant of the entire universe, at least of one universe. So just imagine how powerful, like Prabhupada's saying, well, actually, Yamaraj is saying again in the purport, Prabhupada's explaining that the jiva could do so many things, but only by the sanction of the supersoul. So if you get the sanction of the supersoul, you can do anything. So Hiranyakashipu was almost able to do everything. But if he'd been a pure devotee, then he would have been able to do everything, because he would have had the full sanction of the supersoul. So it's a very intimate and precise relationship that we have with the supersoul. I'm thinking of what to say, and then the air is coming out of a pipe, which isn't working very well right now, actually. And as the air comes out, it makes a vibration, and that vibration indicates a particular idea. And then that vibration is going into your ears. It stimulates whatever it is that's going on in the brain. And then that idea takes the form of pictures inside your mind as you're listening. And that's all happening because of the supersoul. We're not aware of how that is happening. I'm sitting there moving my jaw, but after that, I don't know. I don't know where the ideas are coming from. And I don't know how you're picking them up as well. You may be thinking of something else when I'm saying something and meaning this. So that's why we have questions at the end. So there's a lot of things that are going on which are inconceivable. And because we're dulled down by sense gratification, we take everything for granted and we don't see, we're not able to appreciate how inconceivable everything is. So before there's affection, there's wow, there's reverence. Before we feel affection, we become in awe, because we start seeing the omniscience and the intervention of the supersoul in everything that we're doing, and that creates a sense of awe and reverence, and then eventually that matures into a feeling of affection and gratitude as we develop in our Krishna consciousness. So it's healthy in the beginning, because there's no point trying to give up awe and reverence if you haven't got it. So in the beginning, we need to get awe and reverence. We need to have some awe, some knowledge, some awareness of the majesty of God, of his potency. And then once we have that, then we can put that aside and start looking at having affection for Krishna. Start looking at the rasa. Krishna is more of a person than we are. We're thinking, how can God be a person? But we are only persons because God. It's like a drop of tiny seawater saying, how can the ocean be salty? Well, my friend, any salt you've got it from the ocean. Anything you've got of personality, you've got it because you've got it from. He's the reservoir of personality. He's the reservoir of relationship, of emotion, of love, of feeling, of sensitivity. Krishna is the unlimited reservoir, and we have a tiny drop of that. And we're thinking, how can God be a person? And how can he have a form? And well, just look at yourself. Whatever you've got, he's got unlimitedly. You've just got borrowed plumes from him. And it's only when we're in the spiritual world that then we're unfettered. Right now, we have to be assisted all the time by the supersoul. Supersoul is changing the blood into marrow, changing what you ate last night and digesting it into certain fluids that the body can use. That's all going on, because if the supersoul said, oh, I've had enough of this guy, I'm off, I'm down the job center, I had enough of this one, fed up, and he walked out, then he'd be finished. You wouldn't be able to do anything. You wouldn't be able to digest, you wouldn't be able to see, you wouldn't be able to remember, you wouldn't be able to breathe. Nothing would be functioning. It's all going on in the background. He's orchestrating everything. Can you imagine if you're in an orchestra, right, and you're playing there, and you have to wait, and he goes, so if the conductor says he's had enough and he walks out, everyone's there in the orchestra, and this guy's going, and then someone else is doing it, and it's wrong, and nothing would work. It's all harmoniously going on because it's being conducted by the supersoul. Okay, you start growing. Okay, you go over and eat the flower. Okay, you turn into milk. That's all because of the super soul. Otherwise, and they say, oh, everything's by chance. If everything was by chance, the only thing that chance produces is a mess. If I put 3 pots of paint in here with a stick of dynamite and put all these canvases around the wall and run outside and blow it and come in, you're not going to have like a picture of Krishna, a landscape. And the first thing you do when you see a paint, what's the first thing you do? You say, who painted that? And if it's really good, you're thinking, I'd like to meet the artist. So why don't we do that when we look at the material world? Oh, it just happened by chance. Imagine someone comes in and they say, who painted that one? Prabhu, you'll never believe it. There was a bang last night. Someone had left 3 pots of... We got up this morning. They'd be like, are you kidding? Are you... No, it was an explosion and it just happened by chance. Who's going to believe that? The only thing a chance would produce is a mess. And it's far from a mess. The sun, if it was so many degrees closer, everything would be incinerated. If it was so many degrees further away, everything would be ice. It's like really, really fine, the way it's designed. Imagine a watch. You get the box of cogwheels and you just shake it. What are you doing? I'm making a watch. Give me a couple of million years. Because it'd all have to happen at the same time. Every cogwheel would have to just fall into place right at the right time, all at the same time, symbiotically. You couldn't have like just 2 cogwheels stuck together and then the next week it's 5 cogwheels stuck together. It won't be long now, I'll have a watch soon. It's got to all be in one go. It cannot just, you can't just have something explode instantly into a watch because it's all got to be in the right place at the right time, You'd say, oh, well, we had to explode it quite a few times when we got there in the end. All that would happen is if you kept exploding the cogwheels, you would just end up with this load of particles of tiny little bits of metal. It would break down even further, So if they say there was some laws already existing and then as it exploded into this, what was a vacuum, but which had kind of laws there from what they would do just always there. The law of gravity was just, I mean, you don't create the law of gravity. It's just always been there, isn't it? It can't just fall into a vacuum. It has to have laws. I mean, it's so crazy, isn't it? And it's funny, Prabhupada was saying, they were having this conversation with Prabhupada. They said, oh, it's been happening since time immemorial. Prabhupada said, not since time immemorial. This nonsense has been going on for just a couple of 100 years. A couple of 100 years ago, everybody knew that God existed. It was just like, if you didn't believe in God, you were nuts, Everyone. And suddenly in 200 years, everyone's just walking around like, with their earphones in, and they're just, oh yeah, everything's by chance. You can do what you like. Wow. And then, oh, I've got a mental health issue. Because it's meaningless. Okay, we're going to give you sense gratification unlimitedly, but there's just one catch. There's going to be no meaning to anything. Okay, that's unlimited sex, unlimited intoxication. That's fine, yeah. No meaning, that's okay. 3 weeks later, oh no, I'm going to kill myself, no. Take God out the picture, and you take meaning out of the picture. There's no meaning anymore. You can do anything you like. But and they want to have fun. If you want to have fun, then be Krishna conscious. Then you can have fun. Everything is nice. Everything's in its place. We eat at the right time. We eat the right thing. We eat in the right consciousness. We see things as they really are. We see reality. People like intoxication because they don't like reality. But actually it's not reality. They're not perceiving reality. That's why they're taking it. They're already intoxicated by their false ego, and then they just take more intoxication. But if you could see reality, see things as they really are, then you would need intoxication, because that's an amazing trip in itself. It's like everything is wow. I was standing outside a door once doing door to door, and the sunlight was shining, and there was a bit of mist in the air, and this bee was hovering, and its wings had arced. So because the bee's wings move so fast, you can't see them moving. And the bee is like this big bumblebee, and it had these 4 tiny circles of light, and it was just suspended. It was like so mystical. But normally when you see a bee fly past, you don't really see it for what it is, But it's they cannot make one of those. They can't make a body that big, suspend on wings that small. It defeats aerodynamics because it's mystical power. So it's funny, isn't it? With their meaning, they find the meaning of everything, and it just takes the meaning out of everything. Isn't that funny? We're going to show you, well, this is actually what it means. The sun, well, what that means really is, it means it's a ball of hydrogen gas, and it's, it must have just been floating around. And anyway, the gas was ignited from something, and that's it now. So it's basically just a hydrogen explosion. And because there's a lot of gas, it's taken a long time before it'll run out, Now, that meaning takes the meaning out of the sun. It's this amazing ball of light, which appears so regulated every day. And through the light, it sustains. We were walking around that Byers Road and Kelvin Grove Park yesterday. There's one bit the light was, the leaves had caught the light, and there was like a shady background. So they were luminous, against the background, and they were vibrant with energy coming from the sun. So that's meaning. That's like, wow, this sun is giving off life. It's sustaining so much stuff. But if it's just a ball of hydrogen gas, then it doesn't mean anything, does it? How do you have a ball of gas blow up for millions of years? Well, we haven't quite worked that out yet, but that's the basic meaning. How does it work that you go down? You go down into the Earth's surface, and there's all this really red-hot lava. Where did that come from? Why not just send the pipe down and generate the heat, get the heat conducted up the pipe, and then just use that to heat all the cities? Any questions or comments? Rainus.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, I was just wondering about the analogy with the conductor, and about I guess super soul being as a conductor in the body. So what happens when there's maybe like a disease or something like that, and what does the conductor do? Or it's just sort of like there's like part is broken and the conductor really can't do anything to fix it, or
so who was the one that went? Which musician was it who went nutty toward the end? Was it Beethoven? Most of them, yeah. There was one. All his music went really dark. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, it was Beethoven, wasn't it? And at that time, whatever the music was like the biggest thing that was happening, So everybody was like, "Wow, have you heard the latest Beethoven?" It goes boom, boom, boom. I really got scared, So the conductor may be upset, and he may decide he wants to make a funny sound. So he's boom, 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 or whatever it is, So if the super soul thinks this living entity is being very, very sinful, give him cancer. So that's what goes on. And then the chief is like, that wasn't a good idea. Eating all that meat, I don't think that was actually a good idea. Shishikon time, my pashashi ki jai. Yes, Kartikeya Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. So Hiranyakashipu is reciting the story, and he is mentioning that the super soul conducting the activities of body is different from the body and the living force. Yeah. So if Hiranyakashipu is saying that, why don't he understand that?
He understands it, but he thinks that he's gonna defeat it. He's saying this is the system, this is how it works. When you're wrong, the king puts you in jail. When you're right, the king gives you a bonus. The king this, the king that, the king made the jail. That's where they go. But then he's thinking, I can't wait to get my hands on the king because I'm going to kill him.
If super soul is conducting the body, the super soul can just stop conducting the body and the body will shut down.
Yeah. Yeah, how he's going to replace the super soul, I don't know. If he kills Vishnu, then this expansion, Adhoksaja Vishnu, that sits in the heart of every living entity, Hiranyakashipu will have to work out a way of expanding himself, and then he's going to have a lot more stuff to deal with than he does already. Because Krishna, he doesn't like to deal with it directly himself because it interferes with his fun. So Hiranyakashipu wants to imitate Krishna. He's going to have to expand himself, which the jiva can't do. Hiranyakashipu is a jiva. Jiva Tattva can't do that. Vishnu Tattva can. He can expand himself, and they can all do different things at the same time. The jiva can expand. If he's a very accomplished yogi, he can expand himself into 9, but all 9 have to be doing the same thing at the same time. Interesting story, isn't it? Yes. Well, not a story, reality.
There's one very popular philosophy. People like to talk, and they say the meaning of life is to give life meaning. Life is inherently, it doesn't have any meaning, but we can provide our own meaning to it, and that's what gives us purpose, etc. Like there's a famous philosopher said, the only real question is whether or not you decide to kill yourself. Once you've decided to live, then you decide there's some purpose here, so you might as well just get on with it. So what would you say to that philosophy?
Well, the first question, because if everyone is believing their own meaning to life, then there's many meanings. So the first question would be, is the absolute truth? Is there an absolute truth? Because if there's an absolute truth, then that would transcend your meaning. Somebody may stumble across the meaning, but not everybody could be right. Only the ones that had come across the same meaning. There's a chance that they could be right, not necessarily that they are, but only if everybody was agreed on the same meaning, would there be some weight to their theory. That's why they need people to believe in their theories, to give it weight. But then if you ask first of all, is there an absolute truth? And if they say no, then that becomes the absolute truth, that there isn't an absolute truth. Which means there's still an absolute truth, really. You can't get away from an absolute truth, an all-pervading absolute truth. So then the question is, okay, well, what is that? And is that absolute truth impersonal, or is the absolute truth personal? And you'd only find that out if you could figure yourself out first. If you're trying to figure out the ocean, then you're going to have to figure out what you're composed of, what your constitution is, what things upset you, what things please you. That's an indication of what the ocean is like. And so it's based upon self-realization, because self-realization will then help us to understand what the absolute truth is, because we're part of the absolute truth. So the way that we function and the way we're put together is giving us an indicator of the clockmaker and who he is, I mean, we talk about who painted the painting, but really we should be asking who created us, who put us together, who thought us into existence. We only exist because somebody has created us. And, that would be really interesting to find out. Why did you create me? Because everyone's been created for a different reason. Everyone has a different relationship. Nobody can be you better than you. And because only you can be you, only you can please God in the way that you can. Nobody can replace you. And so for that reason, he's missing us right now. His creation is not as complete in the absence of those he's created for his pleasure.
I've heard there's one, the Greek philosopher, Socrates, he having this big debate, saying, well, there's many different truths. And he said, well, so basically they're saying, well, each person can believe their own truth, and that's good enough. They said, well, I'm going to believe that the absolute truth is the truth.
Yeah.
If the absolute truth is the truth, then it sort of circumvents everything else.
Yeah, because people can have relative truths, and if you have an absolute truth, like a relative truth is, I'm more important than the cow. That's a relative truth. So therefore, I can eat the cow. But then an absolute truth is, you are important, as is the cow. Then it's an encompassing truth.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. So I was thinking about this light. So and I'm trying to relate it to the nature of each individual soul relative to the nature of the super soul. Uh, like, uh, like as each individual soul is coming from the super soul, is a part and parcel of the Supreme Personality.
Yeah.
Then why we possess different kinds of natures, likes and dislikes. Every personality is different, right? So each individual soul possesses different characteristics, right? But if we are coming from the Supreme Soul, why we don't possess the same characteristics, like similar kind of, not in quantity but in quality. Like, and I'm trying to, and something came in my head. It's like if there is a white light and we diffract it, then it diffracts into different wavelengths of light, like a spectrum of colors. So is there a medium which actually changes or diffracts this ultimate nature of the super soul to different natures of each individual soul?
Well, you have three primary colors, and then according to how you mix them, you have a spectrum of color, and then you have all the different nuances. So if you decide you're going to do a painting and the only color you're going to use is white, then the paint wouldn't look too good with it. There is a painting, actually, it was a modern art painting. It's called White on White, and it was a canvas, and it was just covered in white paint, and it sold for £12.5 million. Oh yeah, it's such a con. This modern art, you know. So if you just use white, it's not much good. So Krishna wanted everyone to be a little bit different. So one's a shade like this, and it's an unlimited amount of shades. Everyone just slightly. That one's a little bit more yellow. That one's got a little bit more red. That one's got just, and then you have all this unlimited variety. And ultimately, they're all coming from the one white, but he expands. It's interesting because he not only are the jivas, which are tiny expansions, unique, but also the Vishnu tattva when he expands, when he becomes all the cowhead boys, for when Brahma takes them away, and they're all. But it's not that when they come out that they're all doing exactly the same thing. They're all different, which is inconceivable, isn't it? And even the first expansion, Balaram, he's so different from Krishna, although he's none different from Krishna. But his nature, he's more. He placates when people get a little bit upset, because Krishna can be a little bit cheeky, you know, and people can get a bit upset. And Balaram will say it's okay. He's Dauji, he's the big brother. So the cowhead boys would go to him for reassurance, you know, and he'd be like, it's okay, I'll sort it out. So if they're not getting anywhere with Krishna, they'll go and see Dauji, and he'll sort it out. And he's Krishna's first expansion, and yet he's so different from Krishna. So it's hard to get our head around being a person who has no restriction to what he wants to do and has unlimited power, unlimited Shakti, which is increasing all the time. All the time, the Brahma Jyoti is giving out life, and at the same time, the soul is eternal. That's inconceivable, isn't it? Right now, there's more jivas being created because there's a fountainhead. They're coming out all the time, and yet at the same time, they're eternal. Because we're stuck in time, you see. We're frozen in time. The actual time doesn't have past or future. Actual time only has now. But we're stuck in between a slither, a very, very fine slither, which lasts the amount of time it takes a ray of light to go across a molecule. that time it takes. That's how long now lasts. That's what we're stuck in between. And otherwise there's a big future that doesn't exist and a big past that doesn't exist. It's only the now that exists. But in the spiritual world, you break away those two walls of past and future, and the now just expands. That's inconceivable, eh? A never-ending, all-increasing, ever-encompassing now that just gets more and more interesting, but stays the same time.
What was the need for all of this, for God to create the material world, for all of us to come from spiritual world to here?
What was the need? Well, generally, when the government's building a city, it'll build a prison house. And they'll say to the king, but look, there's no criminals right now. Everyone's really good. And the king says, yeah, I know, but give them time. You'll end up with a few idiots. And then sure enough, a few years later, the prison's full. Your Majesty, I think we need another prison, actually. The citizens are not behaving as well as we thought they should. And because Krishna is all cognizant, he already knows that. He knew as you were created that you would or wouldn't spend time in the material world, and he knew how long each one would if they did. Out of all the ones that are created, 90% never leave. It's only 10% that fall. We're the 10%. We're the numpty section in the cosmic manifestation. Ooh. We got it wrong. Most of them don't get it wrong. They look at the material world and say, forget it. No way, Jose. No, I think it could be. Look, there's a Tesco's. I'm going to check it out. Welcome to the material world. The first position is Brahma. I get to be in control of an entire universe. Wow. It's the first position when you fall. Brahma. Almost eternal life. Almost like God, everything. And Brahma is so powerful, even the Hiranyakashipu was coming begging to him, you know. But only so that he can get the power to destroy everybody, including Brahma, if need be. If Brahma doesn't comply with what he wants, then he's going to kill Brahma as well. And because Brahma is not fully aware of what's going to happen in the future, he's giving these benedictions that are going to cause so many problems. Whereas Vishnu doesn't give you what you want, he gives you what you need. So you come to Vishnu and you say, no, this guy needs a good slap. That's what he needs. Bong. That's why he has the club. He gives you the club or the chakra. And the reason why he has those symbols is because he already knows that there will be living entities that will cause problems. So he has the club ready and the disc ready.
So if somebody who goes to Vaikuntha, there is still chance to fall down.
Prabhupada said it's not impossible, but he said once bitten, twice shy. So once you go, and it refers to in the Gita, that place where having once been, one never returns. So you'd have to be really, really silly to go for it a second time. Press this red button and see what happens. You press the red button and a big mallet goes on top of your head, and then you come up the next time. Want to press that red button again? Go on then. I mean, you'd have to be really stupid, right, to do that. Most people anyway. But it's not that you couldn't, just that you wouldn't be inclined to. Krishna doesn't interfere with your independence. So you're only free to stay in Vaikuntha forever because you're also free to go. You always have independence. And independence means accountability. It's your fault. Nobody likes to take the blame these days. They're always trying to shift the blame onto somebody else. So if you keep shifting the blame, you lose your accountability and you lose your empowerment, and it's reduced. So whatever area of jurisdiction you have, like there was this man, he killed a cow and Yamaraj came for him. He said, who killed the cow? He said, it wasn't me, it was the cow's karma. I just acted because, the modes of nature. And so Yamaraj went away and the man made a garden, a really nice garden. And then the Yamaraj came over and he said, who made the garden? And he said, I grew those flowers and I cultivated the grass and I did this and I did that. And then Yamaraj said, who killed the cow? So they want to take credit for things, but they don't want to take the blame for things. But you have to accept both, you know. Now, if you want to refuse the blame, then you also reduce your ability then to take the credit for anything. You lose your field of empowerment. Because if you're a victim, it wasn't, you know, it's not my fault. You know, they traumatized me. Oh, so then you have lost your power of control over the situation because you want to be the victim now. So therefore, nobody can blame you. You have to be given, you're entitled to things because you're a victim, you know. So you get your entitlements, but you lose your power. You because it wasn't up to you, then it can never be up to you now to resolve a situation or change things or make things better because you're a victim. So how can you do anything? You're just helpless. That's the price you pay if you want to play the victim. If you don't want to be a victim, then you can be a victor. You can be victorious. You can ride over the challenges and you can succeed. But you can't be a victor and be a victim at the same time. You've got to be one or the other. A victor or victim. As long as you're a victim, then you can never be a victor. And when you're a victor, then you're no longer a victim. You were just took advantage of the situation and the circumstances, and went on and achieved great things. We've got 120 seconds. If anyone's got a quick question. Anyway, it's an amazing section, really amazing. There's so many nice points. I didn't really get a chance to go into it. But Prabhupada was making some very nice points in the purport. That we're acting in cooperation with the Super Soul. So that's why we should always be very humble. If anything goes right, it's because the Super Soul helped us to do it. And if we're always aware of our helpless condition in the material world, then we can always depend upon Krishna. But we break that relationship when we want to start taking the credit. And we want to forget that it's him. That's the false ego. The real ego is I'm tiny, I'm insignificant, and everything is being done by the mercy of Krishna. And then I proceed along in that way.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. For an initiated devotee, is he guided by the super soul or guided by the spiritual master from within, say?
If he's in it, well, anyone can be guided whether they're initiated or not.
But an initiated devotee, is he guided by the super soul or by spiritual master?
Well, initiated is a big word, isn't it? It means a lot of things. It doesn't just mean who threw their banana in a fire. Initiated means Srila Prabhupada was initiated long before he took formal initiation from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So as soon as you're receptive, it's compared to a potent man and a fertile woman, impregnation can take place. So if you're fertile and the person you're hearing from is potent, then you can become impregnated with transcendental knowledge. And that impregnation means that you connect with the will of the Super Soul. You become aware. You become aware that that the spiritual master is Shakshad Haritve, that is non-different from the Super Soul. And Srila Prabhupada emphasized Vani, but I'm reading Chasing Rhinos right now with the Swami, and you see how much Srila Prabhupada was able to affect people, you know, through his Vapu. And that was like the initial experience, but then what would sustain that would be the adherence to the Vani. And Prabhupada had so much Shakti that he could give somebody prema just by looking at them. There was one devotee, all Prabhupada ever said to him was Jai. And that kept him going his entire life. It was so powerful, the way he said joy to his soul. So, and everyone said that when they were in the presence of Srila Prabhupada, that they felt that he could read their minds and that he could see who they really were. So real guru is one, because there's different levels of guru. But the Uttama is one who understands his Swarup, and he also understands your Swarup. So there's gurus in progress, because the best way to become an Uttama Adhikari is to become a guru, because that's you make the fastest advancement by taking responsibility for others. So you could be Kanishta Guru, making very rapid progress to becoming an Uttama, much faster than practically anybody else that's doing any other type of devotional activity. So you're a work in progress. And then you have Chaita Guru, the Lord in the heart, and he confirms. The spiritual master will say something, and then the super soul in the heart will say, that was spot on. Just like when we stop somebody in the street and they decide to take the book, because the super soul inside is telling them, trust this person. You can trust this person. Give him your money, it'll be good for you to do this. Do what he wants you to do. Listen to him, he's speaking the truth. It's the nature of the truth, because we're made of the truth ourselves, that when we hear it, we recognize it. We recognize it as the truth. And you can hear so many people saying so many things, but it just doesn't hit the mark. And so your degree of ability to stimulate people's awareness of the truth is determined by your purity. As you become more pure, then you have more of an impact. But even though we have so many great souls now in ISKCON, they're doing so many things. Nobody did what Prabhupada did in such a short space of time. He had so much potency.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. So, like a quick question, or maybe I will ask later. It will take a long time, maybe. So my question is like there are two kind of energies. One is Parashakti and one is Aparashakti, right? So Parashakti means we jivas and Apara means matter, right?
Yeah.
So matter means like atoms, molecules, everything. Yeah. So if we try to excite an atom using an external energy, then the atom goes to different energy levels, right? Energy level 1, 2, 3 at different energy levels when we excite that atom from its ground state. So it goes in different energy levels and it stays there for a while, and it is different relative to different atoms and molecules. So my question is like the Aparashakti is having some sort of consciousness, like that atom is having like they have some consciousness to stay at an energy level for a certain amount of time and then go back to the ground state. So is it like they also have some consciousness, the atoms, so that they are living at that energy state and then going back to the ground state after a certain period of time?
Srila Prabhupada said every molecule is eating, mating, sleeping, and defending in their own way. And that's the smallest body, the body of the molecule. So, and the consciousness must be so reduced to be in that body. It's so, 1 minute you're in charge of a universe, the next minute you're a particle, So the consciousness has been heavily compromised, but it's still the consciousness is there. The Bhagavatam doesn't go into so much the nitty-gritty, because if we become too enthralled by what's going on in the mechanism of the material world, then we can become distracted from wanting to get out the material world. So everything here is a perverted reflection. So when Brahma wasn't sure what to do, Krishna showed him the spiritual world, and then he used earth, water, fire, air, and ether to mimic and replicate what he'd seen in the spiritual world. He made the grass and the trees and things, but he used it like having a lump of clay and showing the person, well, I want you to make this figure And the person doesn't even have a figure himself or a form himself and say, well, this is the form that I want. And then he makes it out of clay. And that's the body in the material world. So everything here is just a dull imitation of what's there in the spiritual world. And here we need to have, certain size limbs to obey certain laws, but there's no restraints in the spiritual world. So you can have 2 arms occupying the same place. And we can't do that. You can't have like a finger there and a finger there, and they're both moving independently of each other. That we can't do that. But in the spiritual world, nothing is restricted by dimension anymore. So rather than becoming fascinated by how the material world is working, use whatever energy and time we have to become fascinated by how the spiritual energy works, unfettered by the constraints of the material energy, because this is just a poor reflection, You see these nice paintings and you think, wow, it'd be so nice to be there in the spiritual world. This is just giving me an indication. But just standing around that painting for the rest of my life is not going to do me much good. I need to go where the painting's indicating. Iskon Guru in the key. Shil Prabhupada ki. Go to Premanandi Hari Hari Bo.
His Grace Adhoksaja Krishna Prabhu ki.
All of you ki jai.